product provided by Nintendo. Over this past weekend, I dived head first into Labo VR. I spent many hours building every Toy-Con available in the VR kit. Quite honestly, I enjoyed that time thoroughly, and it's for that reason that in this video, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how I want Nintendo to use these Labo Toy-Con in future Nintendo Switch games. And I'm not doing it alone. I recruited Dan from That Cybert Channel to help me out.
No! He's in my video already! What, I can't be part of the Cool Kids Club anymore? You gotta make a video without me?
I'm sorry, AJ. I tried to stop him, but he followed me from his video.
Way to go, Dan. I wanted to make a good impression on Mr. Bowser's first day, and here you go, breaking Nintendo's #1 rule, no Bob Wolf. They told us very clearly in the contract, no Bob Wolf. But it's fine, everything's fine, I'll just delete all his video files. That'll solve this problem. Now, it's time to get into it. Viewers, feel free to suggest your own ideas for Labo Toy Con in the comments. We'll discuss them on this week's episode of our podcast, which Bob is invited on. Don't tell Nintendo. You all knew this was coming, so let's just get it out of the way now. Pokemon would be an incredible game to experience with Labo VR support. Take a second to take note of the fact that I didn't specifically say Pokemon Snap, like literally everyone else on the internet. There are two reasons for that. One, I don't think it'd be very interesting to hear yet another person on YouTube talk about how the camera Toy-Con is the perfect excuse for Pokemon Snap. And that leads me to my second reason. The Pokemon IP could honestly naturally yield fun experiences for most of the Labo VR Toy-Con that would all work well for add-ons for a full-fledged Pokemon game if Nintendo and/or Game Freak saw fit to make them. For those of you that have yet to try Labo VR, I'd say the biggest draw to it isn't VR itself in isolation. It's the addition of the Toy-Con, which give you a varied amount of tactile feedback, which adds to the experience of VR. It's basically a Universal Studios 4D attraction that you put together yourself. Perfect example for this idea being the wind pedal. Feeling a gust of air as you fly through the sky adds to the immersion factor, and that's a design strategy that Game Freak is no stranger to. The Pokeball Plus is a similar approach as it aims to physically connect you to the experience of catching a Pokemon. I think adding Labo VR into the mix would be especially exciting for Pokemon fans like me, the ones that enjoy the world the most, more so than the gameplay as it exists right now. My mind immediately went to the ability to fly around on a Pokemon from town to town. In the past, Game Freak has turned that into a minigame, so doing so here with the combined power of the Toy-Con Bird and Toy-Con Wind Pedal, they could bring that experience into virtual reality Nintendo style. Imagine if they brought back the soar mechanic from Oraz in Sword and Shield, and on your way between towns and islands, you could race to approach and battle rare or high IV'd flying types to add them to your team. And sure, while we're at it, why not, rather than creating a game dedicated to the idea of taking pictures of Pokemon in a new Pokemon Snap, we just make that possible in Sword and Shield as well with Labo VR support. They could have Safari Zone-like facilities where you can go through similar on-rail exhibitions with secret entrances and events, just like the ones found in the original game, tying it all together. The camera Toy-Con game in Labo VR proper is basically Pokemon Snap with fish and mermaids and whatnot, so all of the control inputs are taken care of. And we don't just have to use the camera either. If they really wanted to, they could use the Elephant Toy-Con to make a berry picking mini game or a Smeargle mini game, but if we're being real, that's veering into Pokemon Stadium territory. Finally, they could just use the base headset for things like deep sea diving in search of wild water Pokemon and hidden items, or just exploring parts of the Galar region in VR. And taking Pokemon battles into VR would be awesome as well.
We already saw Pokemon Snap Light in Sun and Moon, and I think Game Freak could take the camera Toy-Con to greatly build on that experience. Pokemon has always had solid minigames, especially in Coliseum. I have no doubt that Pokemon could create a ton of different minigames that could greatly help out the main story with either item rewards or Pokemon. Why not? I want that Mew.
It doesn't even have to end there. Pokemon is a vast property that they can create any number of Toy Con experiences around if they wanted to. With that said, maybe take a quick break to let me know in the comments what you would want to see Game Freak make with Labo VR. For this next bit, I wanted to bundle in multiple Nintendo franchises that I think could benefit from Labo VR in very similar ways. My favorite Toy Con out of all of them by far is the Labo VR Blaster. It's easily the closest to that theme park attraction experience that I talked about, down to the way you can physically load and fire shots thanks to the smart engineering work done by the team over at Nintendo EPD. The core of the Toy Con is physically caught and released by a mechanism that gives you that satisfying feedback when you load and fire in game. Games like Metroid Prime, Star Fox, and Kid Icarus Uprising could all take this Toy Con and run with it while remaining very true to the core of what each of them have to offer. Metroid Prime is the easiest series that I can think of, as there's already a full trilogy of games that are presumably making their way to Switch anyway. But supporting the Labo Blaster would require them to think outside the box a bit, as using it would require both hands to hold, and you have no way to use movement. Maybe they can make a boss rush mode that's playable in VR, or create an on-rails mode with sections from the game. At any rate, if they figured something out, I'm sure they could apply those ideas to Prime 4 whenever that comes out, assuming a more powerful Switch with better VR support doesn't exist by the time that game eventually sees the light of day. Star Fox is an even more natural fit, as it already originated as an on-rails shooter, so making that work well with Labo VR would be pretty straightforward. I'd imagine the best way to do this would be to either release a new Star Fox game made specifically for this, or by porting Star Fox Assault, as it's easily the most varied game in terms of gameplay mechanics. I previously suggested Star Fox Zero, and I think that would work fine, but in this case you would be able to do on foot, Landmaster, R-Wing, and plenty more that isn't in Star Fox Zero. Using the blaster could work well for the Landmaster or on-foot segments, while the VR headset alone would be a good fit for R-Wing missions. Star Fox used to be Nintendo's vehicle for showcasing new strides in visual technology since the days of the Super FX chip. It'd be nice if they brought the series back to its roots by using it to further usher Nintendo into the world of VR. Finally, Kid Icarus Uprising is a game that I don't think got its fair shake on 3DS. It's easily one of my favorite games on that platform, and I guess that makes sense for those that know me, considering the fact that Smash Bros. Director Masahiro Sakurai is also behind that game. I think using Labo VR could solve the controls problem that game had on 3DS, just by virtue of the Switch inherently supplying players with 2 analog sticks, and it could do so without sacrificing the increased spatial awareness the original was designed for in 3D. The Blaster Toy Con would be fun to use in the on-rail segments in the sky, and the rest of the game could just make use of the standalone headset. I don't know if multiplayer would make its way to this game, but I wouldn't mind playing online matches with some friends if Nintendo allowed that as well.
Look, I don't know how long I would use the Labo VR for Metroid Prime 4, but I would absolutely love the chance to see the world through Samus's eyes. Metroid has always had incredible environmental design, and the same goes for both Star Fox and Kid Icarus. I would love to be able to see those worlds in full VR. It's the closest I'm gonna get to Nintendo until Nintendo Land opens in theme park form. Still waiting on that Universal, let's hurry it up! Star Wars Land beat you to the punch.
And that wraps up this little Toy Con Blaster brainstorm. But again, I want to know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what ideas you have for the Labo VR Blaster.
Hey, you know what comes out in June? Some sweet Mario Maker 2 action.
Oh, now it's Mario Maker? Now you're gonna talk about Mario Maker without?
And you know what? I think there are some interesting things that you could do with Mario Maker using the Labo VR. Building can be done using the line of sight cursor function we see in the menu navigation from the Labo software. But while that can sound clunky, it does come with one distinct advantage: being able to quickly look back and forth through your level just by turning your head. You could spend less time scrolling back to check your work and simply look left to make sure it's building right. But the part that seems more interesting to me is that you could create stages that wrap around the player, 180-degree VR levels that players can follow Mario through. Now, part of the challenge of Mario is not knowing what's coming next in the stage and having a player be able to look right and see the full level does take away from that. However, I think this instead opens up creators to build more complex and thought out puzzle and maze-like maps. They could create maps that require the player to observe, plan, and execute more complex moves in order to survive. And if you still don't like it, slap a 100-second timer on there and force the player to figure it all out quickly. Giving people a chance to build and play from a different perspective will add tons more value to Mario Maker 2.
I completely agree, and I think that the Labo Garage showcases pretty well how something like this could work. I'd also like to add that, if they wanted, VR would make it possible to implement depth into the equation, similar to the way that modern Donkey Kong Country games do in their level design, or for a more direct comparison, Kirby Triple Deluxe. If I had to attach a specific Toy Con to this concept, the natural fit would be the Elephant Toy Con, as that has a rudimentary solution for detecting depth and motion for placing level elements in the background.
When I was playing some of the smaller games in VR, I noticed that a lot of them allowed you to change the camera angle from being on the ground level where everything is huge, and I totally didn't accidentally jump scare myself, to a bird's eye view where you could see an entire field. And instantly, I thought this could really work for Pikmin in a real-time strategy type way. Pikmin has traditionally been more a third-person strategy game with you going around and throwing Pikmin, but imagine if Olimar and his crew were able to command the Pikmin from the safety of their spaceship. Using the line of sight mechanic again, you could select and command teams of Pikmin from a top-down view similar to StarCraft. With being able to quickly glance at your teams, you'd be able to effectively command an army of Pikmin to collect parts, recruit other Pikmin, and of course, murder the indigenous species of the planet. Survival of the fittest, bro. I have no doubt in my mind that this would actually create an amazing Pikmin experience. That being said, I've only really played one Pikmin, so maybe I'm completely wrong.
I personally know next to nothing about Pikmin. I literally only played the Nintendo Land minigame, which led me to play Pikmin 3. Other than that, my Pikmin experience is limited. So I'll take Dan's word for it and your word for it. Fill in any blanks that we left here being Pikmin noobs and all of that. Animal Crossing is a clear fan favorite on this channel, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this franchise in this video. It's on the level of Pokemon in regards to the flexibility it has to implement new things like Labo and all of its Toy Con. In fact, I'd say it's even more flexible than Pokemon in this way. The blaster wouldn't work for Pokemon, but you could easily put in a water gun fight minigame or laser tag, and it would be a good fit for Animal Crossing. You could design and redecorate your home in VR, create custom decorations with the Elephant Toy Con, deliver mail for Pete with the Bird Toy Con. Literally every Toy Con could work, and apart from all of that,
we all need a chill VR game, and Animal Crossing is probably one of the most chill Nintendo games out there. If you ignore Tom Nook breathing down your neck to pay off all your loans. I'll pay you when I have the money! Being able to fish, catch bugs, or collect fruit with your neighbors could be a very relaxing experience between all of the stressful games we mentioned above.
Captain Toad is another easy fit for Labo VR using its headset and isolation. But you don't need me to tell you about that. Dan has an entire video already about this subject, so I'll just pass it back over to him.
Last year I did a video talking about how Captain Toad could easily translate over to VR. And plus, I gotta talk about one of my favorite VR games, Moss, so definitely go check that out.
Hey, I was in that video too.
Shh, Bob, the ambassadors are talking.
And those are our thoughts on the Nintendo games and franchises that we think would work pretty well with Nintendo Labo VR. Feel free to answer any number of the questions that I posed in this video, and I'll be sure to either respond down there or on the podcast this week again with Bob. I want to take a bit to thank Dan for helping me out with this video, and I guess Bob. Be sure to subscribe to both of their channels if you haven't already, or if you haven't subscribed here, why don't you do that and ring the bell for more videos like this every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.